We are live. Welcome. Welcome. Hey, it's Mark coming to you from Baker's Green Acres. Today is the 27th, Tuesday, 2022. We're closing on 2023. Closing on 2023, and that's a good thing, I guess. Okay, let's see if we got chats going. Yeah, we do. Okay. Looks like everything's working good. All right, welcome. Happy holidays now that Christmas is over. Merry Christmas. Happy hula days. I'm sporting one of my Christmas presents that I got. All right, Haven's with us. Justin's with us. Jay-Z. Is this not nice or what? My wife got this for me. I actually had this made with the official Baker's Green Acres logo on there, and then my name over here. And this is insulated. It's a Carhartt product, and I know we're supposed to be hating Carhartt now because they made all their employees get the you know what. But this sure is a nice shirt. So Jill got it for me. I wore it today for the first time. Today I had a consulting thing, and I got to tell you, every time I do a consulting, I learn things, and I learned a lot today. I learned a lot. Can't believe they're paying me to come and tell them what to do. But I learned a lot, and this was a very interesting consulting job. Very different than anything I've ever done, and I'm not sure I fully processed all of it at this point. It's quite different, and for reasons of the customer wants to remain probably anonymous. I would say I'm not going to go into locations or anything like that. Not that it was secretive or I was asked to keep it to myself. I'm just going to keep it to myself. But the configuration of this piece of property was just an eye opener. Okay, so I guess the subject for tonight, I might as well get it out there and tell you who's sponsoring the show and all that stuff while I can. But the subject for night is the cavalry is coming, and I that's the title just to get your attention. It's clickbait, is what it is, but I'm telling you, it's kind of tongue in cheek, right? The cavalry is coming, right? Keith, how you doing? And what I'm referring to is like in old Western movies where the settlers are just about to the point where the Indians are going to get them, and then the cavalry shows up. They come over the horizon on their horses and save. That's what I'm referring to when I say cavalry. The horse soldiers, right, in American history. That's what I mean. And am I saying that the cavalry is coming? The answer to that is yes, but it's not what you think. It's not that I have any inside poop other than when I look inside of me, and when I examine the lives of the people that I've been privileged to know and to work for and work with and supervise them working for me. Just human nature. That's where so let me tell you where this whole idea began. Uh, we went down to Andrews Air Force Base in September, and it was me and Jill and the two young boys, Frank and Jim. And one of the things that we did down there that I really found enlightening was to go to Mount Vernon. Now, I've told you guys that I'm a big proponent of the book Founding Gardeners. and it talks about America's founding fathers and how they're known, say like George Washington, he's known as America's first president and a great warrior and the great leader of men. That's how he's known, but that's not how he wants to be known. According to this book, his passion was farming. His passion was gardening, right? They approached it much differently than you can imagine that farming is approached today. It was approached more as a way of life. Let's see, how would I say this? It was like a calling on their life. You wouldn't, if you were, say, a pastor of a church, you wouldn't say, "Oh man, there's big money in this." No, you don't get into it for the big money. And I'm not saying there isn't big money in pastoring, because I know that there are churches where the pastors make a lot of money, but I'm not sure that that's why they get into it. And same thing with the type of farming that we do. I don't ever say that, "Oh man, you should do this because there's good money in this." I'm not saying there isn't good money in it, but I'm not saying that the primary reason to get into it is for the money. It's more a calling. It's more the process is fun and it's enlightening. And when you pass it on to somebody else, you're doing a good thing. And doing good things makes you feel good, makes you feel like you're serving humanity instead of just money grubbing, you know? Like there's no part of robbing banks that you can say, "Boy, I've served my community today." But what's the difference between robbing banks and being a banker? Really? Is there any different? I don't know. That's probably a subject for another day. But the founding gardeners of this country had a foundation that they stood on, and I believe that was agriculture. They were creating wealth from the creation that they were a part of. They were creating wealth. And yeah, always, we got, well, George Washington had slaves. Yeah, that's true. And I'm not saying slavery was a good thing, but it's sort of like some of the things that are around us in the world that I was born into. Yeah, it's not a good thing. I'm not for it, but it's the way it is. It's the way it is here now. Um, and if I had something to do about it, I would. But it's not like if you were born then and you were born into George Washington's home as one of his kids, it's just the way it is. And a lot of the people that worked for him, the slaves that were there, they were glad to be there, because around Mount Vernon, if you weren't there, you were in Indian country, and you couldn't own lands, so you couldn't start up your own colony, slave colony or anything. It was your best bet. And they didn't really know any better. It's not like they were saying, "Boy, things sure were a lot better over on the Ivory Coast." They didn't know any of that. They were taken from there, and all they knew was life here in the United States or the Americas. So anyway, that part of it is a sore spot. But what I saw was the people who worked at Mount Vernon were very glad to be there. It was a good place for them to be, because all a man really needs is a warm place to stay, food to eat, and clean water, and maybe gainful employment, right? George Washington got up before his slaves and went to bed after his slaves. He was leading the charge all the time in that farming operation. And it was more than just a farming operation, too. That's what struck me. It's right on the Potomac River, and it's at a really good place for fishing, really good place for hunting. They did everything from making whiskey to salting fish to anything that they could do to make a profit. They did. He kept his people busy. And if they found something else to do, they would take on more help. And he could easily find help because there were networks of trading of slaves. And if you're making profit, then you can afford to buy new ones. And of course, you want willing slaves. You never want the ones that are known to run off. You want the ones that want to work and are valuable slaves. So you're getting the best ones you can. Anyway, I don't want to make this about slavery, but I mean, a lot of times the good lessons of Mount Vernon get overlooked by slaves. He had slaves. I think they all ate the same food. I think they all slept under the same sky. They all slept in warm buildings. I don't know, and I don't mean meaning all the slaves. I mean everybody who lived at Mount Vernon. They all had the same sustenance. Anyway, don't want to make it about that, but I do want to make it about what I saw there. And the Mount Vernon was more than just it was more than just a guy's farm. It was an enterprise. It was a business. It was a settlement. I mean, people came through there and sold things. People came there and bought things and took them and resold them into other communities. There was a lot of activity going on there. And I know that I have said in the past, well, we're not just a conventional farm operation. We don't just say do one thing. We do lots of things, but we're taking a bit and a piece from all these different operations. Like we do some chickens. We're not doing it like the factory farm guys do. We do it differently, but we do some of that. We do some pigs, do it differently than they do. We do some cows. We do some milk cows. We do some beef, but we do it different than them. We don't do our butchering operation like the USDA outfits do that do that nothing but that. We do a lot of things right in our operation, and we also do training aspects. Let's see, we do community building aspects. So we do way more than just the production of livestock. There's way more going on there. And I could kind of see where, hey, this is just like what was going on at Mount Vernon. I don't have any slaves. I got my kids. They're kind of close to slaves. Excuse me. I got to take a little slug of this tea from my oh yeah. Gee, I wonder if my microphone's plugged in. It's way over there. Can you guys hear me all right? All right. So anyway, that's where this train of thought began. And I thought, oh, okay, I guess I have something else to think about here. Good, because I need things to think about. And I thought about it on my ride home. I thought about, I made a comment to a friend of mine that lives down there in Virginia, and I said, that was quite an operation he had there. And he says, yeah, well, he had slaves, I said, yeah, but, and it didn't go well from there because you couldn't separate the two things, slavery, bad, all you can really do is look at Mount Vernon and, oh, it's terrible because he had slaves, and they did some of that down there at the exhibit. There was a slave cemetery, and it's okay, but they're all dead. George Washington, he's dead too. None of them got to take anything with them. I just don't know if it was an abusive society. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, I thought about that on my way home, and I think about the next thing that we did was Homestead Hog Harvest here. That would have been in November, and then we were down at the Clerics, and it really things started to really come into focus when we were down at the Cleric homestead. They had us staying at a farmhouse that was down the road from their house, 5 miles. And on the ride in the first day, I was looking at all these farmhouses, and a lot of them were old. It's a very old area, just like where I live. It's an old area. And the farmhouses were looking good. They were being renovated by people living in them, Try to figure out who's in those places. You can't really tell, but you look at the vehicles and you say, well, it looks like somebody who's commuting, right? They didn't look like work trucks out there. It just looks like cars, people commuting to someplace bigger to work town jobs. That's what it looked like to me. But I didn't know. Doesn't really matter. But the houses had been renovated and looked good. The barns, not so much. So I started to look at the barns. I started to think about my barn. And it all of a sudden opened up to me that when those barns were built in, say, 1900 to 1920, they were the best thing going. They were state-of-the-art technology, right? And it wasn't like somebody just said, well, I'm going to build me a barn. And then they got out there and started hammering it together. And, yeah, that looks good. No, there was a certain way they built them. There was a certain number of cows they wanted to milk, and so on. There was design characteristics in those barns that were quite specific. And when I all of a sudden realized that, it's like, wow, in 1900, they didn't know 2022 was coming specifically the way I see 2022. Like I have the ability to look back to 1900 and see the construction, but they didn't have the ability to look forward and see what was going to happen in 2022. I had that. And here I am going to DeCleric's house to teach. The whole thing was like a dichotomy because I'm going to DeCleric's house to teach people old world skills about how to process animals. And a lot of people that were in the classes, I looked at them and I said, you're probably the people that are driving those commuter cars at those farmhouses, aren't you? And I bet they were. And yeah, they were, because we questioned them. There was 4 young couples there, and they were in the 35-year-old range. And yeah, they were those people driving those commuter cars in those fixed up farmhouses with the barns that weren't fixed up yet. And so this whole thing that's happening was like, I'm in this, I'm observing this, it's happening. What does this mean? Okay, so there's the question. And I get back to my place and I see that, hey, we went through a lot of towns driving home. We see a lot of storefronts that are boarded up. As far as I know, there weren't Black Lives Matter protests in these small towns in Michigan. Why is this happening? I don't know, but there's just not a lot of business going on. There's not a lot of extra income. Things are kind of receding, monetarily, it seems like. And I thought, well, okay. Then things are picking up on our farm business. People are wanting products from the farm. People are wanting to learn how to produce these products. So the whole farm thing is picking up. Sort of like what was happening at Mount Vernon in a lot of ways. Like, if George Washington wasn't into farming, what would he have been into? If he wanted to create wealth, what would he be into? Was there wealth in politics then, like there is now? Could he be making software deals, and then the Speaker of the House does some commodity trading on it and all that type of thing? Could that be? Was that happening? I don't think so. It wasn't that developed. it wasn't as developed as a society as it is now. I think that was mostly they were creating products, they were trapping, hunting, um, and farming the land, fishing. I don't think there was a whole lot of mining going on back then. Nothing, no, because there was not that much need for steel back then. They weren't building buildings of steel back then. So that's the business that you would be in. That's what you would develop. And along those lines, when I was driving down the road that the de Clerics live on, I went past farmhouse, farmhouse, farmhouse. We were staying in a farmhouse, and I went and looked at the barn. Barn was falling down pretty good. But somebody had put a lot of time and effort into building that farm. And I'm thinking, well, did they just do it because it was kind of a fun thing to do? Did they take their horse and buggy and go into town in Big Rapids and have a desk job? But then let's build a farm because it would be fun. No, they worked at that farm. And somebody had to pay for that barn. That barn would cost north of $200,000 to build now. And I think things are relatively the same. So if you were doing something on that farm, you had to pay that back. So if you were milking 10 cows, what kind of money were you making back then? Is it relatively the same to the money that we make now? Like what was a gallon of milk in 1900 as opposed to a gallon of milk in 2022? If you do those calculations, and I think we fooled around with that already, they're roughly the same. So, but the abundance that these people created on these farms came from the earth. It wasn't like it was trucked in from someplace. And then heading into de Clerics, there was a farm on the left-hand side that was a very modern farm. The buildings looked like industrial buildings, all steel, all pole barn type buildings. A lot of semis out there in front of it. A lot of tanks. A lot of trash laying around. Very muddy, and a whole bunch of 3/4 ton pickup trucks there from the people that work there. If you're an employee of an industrial farmer and you don't have a 3/4 ton pickup, there's something wrong with you. No, I'm just kidding. But there is a lot of 3/4 ton 4-wheel drive pickups here in Missaukee County. It's like you're not a man if you don't have one. And I shouldn't talk because I got one, but mine's old. Anywho, so this operation that I was working on today, and a lot of thought has gone into this consulting operation because it is so different. And yeah, that's only because it's so different. All the human beings are the same. The operation is the same, but it's different because of it's a large tract of property, I guess, and a very unique property. So anyway, I got there and we were looking it over, and wow, like somebody had put a ton of work into this place, and it was quite beautiful. And then we swung around to round 2 of the tour of the property, and the buildings were newer, and they had gone on to different processes and left their signature there that were abandoned. Nothing was going on. And then we even went further down the road and saw other things that had been put together not nearly as well, were falling down at twice the rate, and were abandoned. So you get to see on this property, everybody had their chance at it, their signature at it. And then there was an article in the farmhouse, that was out of the Detroit paper, written about the man that had built this. And I got to skim it. I'm going to ask the gentleman if he would send it to me so I can read more of it. But the man who built this place, it was a childhood dream to build this place. Didn't talk about his family, didn't say whether he had a wife. It was just a picture of him taken in about 1900. And he passed in 21. And he had come into some money, about 250,000, when he was 50. And then he purchased this piece of property. At that time, you could buy property really cheap. Of course, $250,000 in 1900 is probably worth it probably 10 times that now. And it would probably be about the same, because you can buy land like that for probably $3,000 an acre, right? So probably about the same. Everything is relative, if you haven't noticed. Anywho, I read his bio on what he was trying to create, and when we walked down the driveway at this residence, it was like walking down Main Street. It had buildings, one after another, and each building had a specific purpose, right? And we couldn't really tell what that was because they had been repurposed for other things, like, oh, in this building is where we parked the Toyota, and so we call it the Toyota building or whatever. And so we couldn't really tell. And then one of them had been made over and put an apartment in it, which was pretty cool. It was hard to tell what they were. One of them was a sap shed, but we weren't really sure if that hadn't been repurposed from something else, because this man died in 21, and the records that just some of the preliminary records that we saw was how much sap they made in 1950. How much maple syrup they made in 1950. So who really knows? But this guy had a dream, and it said in his bio that he could have done a lot of things with that kind of money, but he did this. And it was almost like, huh, what's the matter with him? You could have lived in town, a very comfortable lifestyle, but you go out to the woods and build a settlement. What is wrong with you? We got to go in the guy's workshop, and there was a picture taken of him in the workshop. Must have been taken in 1918 or in between 1918 and 1921 when he died. I would say, because he died when he was 73, and he looked all of 70 in this picture. And the wood stove that was in the picture was the same one that was still in the shop that I opened the door and I was putting my hands all over it. It was one of those parlor stove, what do they call them? Locomotive stoves, I think, or caboose stoves. Maybe that's it. I don't know, but it's the round one that sits upright. Justin will know. Anyway, this is a good story. And I know the guy had done so much work, and it made mention in the article that he had a servant's quarters. So he had people living there, working there. And well, was he just paying them from the 250,000 that he had, or were they producing? And going through his workshop and looking at all his tools were still there. See, the property had gone to somebody else, and the workshop was just left. I mean, you don't throw tools away, but the people who took it over were more interested in fishing, I guess, because there was a lot of fishing paraphernalia around and boats and stuff. There was a pretty good sized lake on this property. And so the tool shop was just left, but he did something in there. And it wasn't just a hobby shop. You could tell work had come in and work had gone out. And I've been in shops like this, like motor shops, and I mean like electrical motor shops. It really reminded me of one of those shops, but there was a lot of woodworking tools in there as well. There was a forge in there, all the blacksmith tools, No anvil, a really nice vise, um, a lot of sharpening tools, sharpening equipment. And so he was quite a guy, and you could tell. And the house that he designed too. I think he did have a wife, because there was a room that appeared to be the room that faced the lake, and there was a motorized window sash that would drop the window all the way. So you could hit a button, the window would drop, and you'd be in a screened in room in the summertime, which must have been just phenomenal, because this lake is beautiful, and it's a private. There's not one house on it except this one. It's pretty good size too, like over 100 acres. So I got to thinking about the psychology of this guy, right? And what drove him to do all the things that he did from the time he was 50 until the time he died at 73. And I don't reckon he knew he was going to die at 73. He just did. And supposedly he's buried on that property. And a lot of this way of thinking has been all kind of coming in on me. And I made good, new private dating chat. Right on. I made a presentation on Bard's FM. Old Scott Kesterson called me up a few days before Christmas, like one day before Christmas Eve, like maybe the day before that, and said, "Hey, can you give a message to my audience on for Christmas?" And I thought, yeah, what the heck? So I sat down and I just put my phone up, and I just gave a message, and it was what was on my mind. And what was on my mind is, get out there and get it done. You know, quit your complaining, quit your whining, quit the excuses, get out there and get it done. Why? Because if you don't, and you wait for somebody else to do it for you, then they own you, right? That's basically what I wanted to say, but I had to say it a little bit nicer than that. And so I did, and I got a lot of input back on that, a whole lot of input, like very positive. I don't remember exactly what I said, but then I got this from my mother-in-law. Trust in the Lord and do good. My parents-in-law are really, heavily involved in church and things like that, and they never do give stuff like this to me, because they might think I wouldn't take it very well. But I got this, and when I read this, I thought, trust in the Lord, right? Trust in God. That's not easy to do sometimes. And do good. Don't just trust in God. Do something. You're my eyes and ears over here, so do something. But okay, and then it says, dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. I think that is dynamite right there. Dwell in the land. What does that mean? What does dwell in the land mean? It doesn't mean just sit on your can. It means live in the land. And what's our responsibility as the Adam and Eve of the creation that we live in? Yeah, it's not just watch Dancing with the Stars. That's not it. We have more to do than that. And I think you guys know. I don't need to explain it to you. And this doesn't necessarily have to be something that makes you a crazy charismatic Christian or anything. This is pretty mellow, I think. Even if it's not true, it's still a good way to go. And I had the good fortune of listening to a guy, an Indian guy, yesterday. He was on a podcast that I listened to. Owen Benjamin had him on, actually, and it was he's a guy that ran for Congress out in Massachusetts, and I'm from Massachusetts, and I've heard this guy talk before, and his name is Shiv. Can't remember his last name. He's an Indian immigrant, and I like to listen to immigrants a lot because their point of view about our country is refreshing. And so I was listening to him, and he was saying, look, I'm not a Christian, but there's words of wisdom here. And he quoted almost this verse, and then he gave the counterpart of it to it in the religion that he's part of, which I guess would be Hindu, or possibly, I'm not exactly sure. And I thought that this is good, and this is a good message. So what does this boil down to for me, and why am I telling you all this? He talked about this thing, what he called this Shiv guy, and I've been aware of this for a long time, but he put a name to it. He called it the God complex, right? And I've seen this in my circles, Christian circles, I guess you'd say. I grew up Catholic, but I guess I would consider myself a Christian. And a lot of Christians are sort of like, or a lot of people in general are sort of like, well, it's in God's hands. Like, I don't need to do anything. So it's sort of like their ticket to say, not my problem. It's in God's hands. And I have never liked that. I'd say, no, you need to try a little bit more than that before you get to the place where you say, I can't do anything. There are times when there are problems, especially personnel problems, where I really have to say, okay, I've done all I can do. And I really mean it. That's all I can do. And now it is out of my hands, and it is in someone else's. That may be some other human beings, or it may be the God of the universe. I don't know, but I know it's out of my hands, right? But it's easy for people to say, oh, it's in the Lord's hands. I don't need to do anything. Well, it's in the Lord's hands. Like, what? No, come on. We're facing a lot of problems as a country right now. I think it's about 50% real problems and 50% drama. There's money in drama. There's money in fear porn, they call it. There's money in that. But we definitely have leadership problems. Definitely. And I never really thought, let's go back to before I'm just trying to make sense of this in my mind. I don't want to preach to anybody, but in my mind, let's go back to before the election in 16. I happened to have run for county sheriff back then. And my thought was, I'll fix it myself. That's why I ran for sheriff. Like, I had gone to the county sheriff and said, hey, this isn't being done right. Can you do this? And he's like, nope, I can't. All right, I'll do it myself. And so I ran for sheriff, and I probably would have been elected if it weren't for the Dominion voting system. But we didn't know anything about that back then. We knew nothing about that. And whatever, I didn't get elected. I put my foot forward, and that's really the important part of it. But in the 2016 election, I didn't know anything about Donald Trump. I knew nothing about him. I never watched, the shows that he's on, and I didn't know anything about him. And I knew I didn't like Hillary Clinton. I'd seen enough of her, and her voice makes my skin crawl. And I hated her husband for the things that he did and the what he put our country through. So yeah, my vote went to Donald Trump, and yeah, it was kind of fun, wasn't it? All of our liberal friends started to really squirm. That was fun. I don't know why they squirmed so bad. It's not like Trump was going to do anything, but I had some liberal friends up in Traverse City, and they were all down in the mouth about. It's like they had been briefed that they're all going to be killed or something, and I'm like, what are you guys so down in the mouth about? That? I mean, what was Hillary going to give you something, or because at that point I thought I've never really seen any big difference between a Democrat administration and a Republican administration. Not really. And so I wasn't expecting anything, but it was kind of fun to watch them squirm. And And then they started calling me a Trump supporter, and I didn't know why. Like, how do you know who I voted for? Like, oh, I have Trump written all over me, right? Why is that? I don't know. But anyway, then we began this whole thing that Trump was going to make America great again. Like, he's going to make America great again. And we bought it. And we watched the liberals squirm more and more. What? We're going to do away with a lot of the, boys in beds type stuff. No, that wasn't going to happen. Trump was all about that. So how are we going to make America great again? Yeah, price of gasoline was down. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, and a lot of things sounded good. Yeah. Okay. And now we got the crazy guy in there, the old sleepy guy. And now we're waiting for the cavalry to come and things will be great again. Okay. So it's like the God complex. We're waiting for someone to come. We're waiting for the cavalry to come. And for a while, I was saying, yeah, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump the second time. We'll make America great again. But they never even fixed the whole Dominion voting system. Like, they never did that. And most of the guys on the right really didn't want Trump, and nobody on the left wanted him. So what's going on? It's just craziness. And now we got Sleepy Joe in there. They're talking about diesel shortage. We were supposed to be out of diesel fuel, weren't we? Already. Fuel shortages. Gasoline shortages. I don't know. I haven't seen any stations closed down. I've gotten it every time I've pulled in a gas station. Food shortages. I was at Ebel's the other day. I didn't see one open spot in the grocery store. Not one. I didn't ask anybody. Maybe they're filling it in with toilet paper or something, but it sure looked full to me. So they're telling us all these things that are going to happen, this crazy stuff that's going to happen. And this winter, man, it is going to be so cold. People are going to freeze to death in their homes. Well, here we are, almost January. I don't know. So they're creating this God complex. Like, we are always waiting for an individual to come and fix things. Religions do it too. You guys know what I'm talking about. And I don't ever remember in our religion where the Christ said, just sit on your hands until I come. Let everything fall down around you. Let Satan run rampant until I come back. I don't remember him ever saying that. As a matter of fact, I remember him saying, tarry until I return. I think that's on par with dwell in the land. Dwell in the land. My dwelling. This is my dwelling. This is where I keep my tools. It's where I keep my weapons. This is where I keep my clothes, my food, my dwelling. This is where I operate out of. Right? I don't just sit on my hands in here. But I know there are dwellings in the community, the larger community, that are simply a place where people just sit on their hands and they don't do anything. And they're waiting for a savior. So we have these extremes, like, we got to get this fixed. And then, no, we've got to do anything. It's in God's hands, or it's in Donald Trump's hands, or it's in Joe Biden's hands. And I'm not sure that it's either one, because that's not what this says. This is saying dwell in the land, right? Dwell in the land until I dwell in the land and enjoy safe pastures. Dwell. It's not like just wait for me to return, wait for me to save you. Okay, so this is what my message to the Bayard or the Bard's crowd was. I'm not saying there's not support coming. I'm not saying that. Like, because some people are saying no one's coming to save you. No one's coming. You're screwed. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, because that's more like, if you don't accept this message, you're going to burn in hell. I don't like that fire and brimstone stuff. And I don't, it doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't motivate me. That's not the way I was created. I am a created being. I know that. What motivates me is not that. I'm not sure I can actually put my finger on what does motivate me right now as I'm talking. But Nathan P, that's funny. That is funny, man. If that's true, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, I know that's supposed to really demoralize me too. There's like this massive campaign going on out there to demoralize and divide the American public by a very small group of people. But if we just ignore them, and maybe I have more of a handle on this than you guys do, because I grew up in a household I had 5 sisters, and I was the second to the youngest. And so 5 girls, they're like an organism. They all back each other up, and they were all hating me, right? And telling my mother what a rotten guy I was. And, my mother kind of spoke their language, and I felt like I was, and, but I had to really learn how to just like ignore it and press on, ignore it and press on. Okay. That's funny. He's saying, I don't want to get into that right now. I want to make this point. My point is here, and I'm thinking that this is the way I'm going to proceed from now on. You guys can do what you want, but this got a lot of interest. And anytime there's a concept that comes out of multiple things that happen, multiple linear thoughts, linear actions that cross, and there's a common theme that comes out of it. It's been my experience. Hey, we've got a pattern forming here. We've got a pattern forming. Let's look at this. And when you start to look at it, all of a sudden, boom, I wind up on this consulting today. And that is exactly the direction that man was going with that operation. Exactly. He was saying, I've got to take care of myself. No one's going to build this community if I don't. He didn't have to shake himself out of a trance of, I'll just sit here on a rock in the woods and someone will come and build this community. Somebody will build this blacksmith shop for me. Someone will do that. He didn't do that. He said, I know we're going to need the ability to blacksmith some iron here, so I'm going to do it. And he did it. He did it. So that's who I think we need. That's who I'm going to be. I'm not going to be, for all this time I've been saying, you guys, I don't know why. I'm feeling optimistic. And it must have been, oh yeah, it's because Donald Trump's going to fix things for us. And I think that we even get fooled into thinking, yeah, it was better under him, wasn't it? But the other side thinks that it's really good to have Joe Biden as the president because they hated Donald Trump. I don't really hate Biden. I just think he's totally ineffective. And I think the people around him, like this guy you're talking about, Pete Buttigieg, that has got to be a joke. It really does. The guy's name is Buttigieg, and he's a gay guy, and his better half lives in Traverse City, of all places. Of all places. Holy smokes, that is rich. What if it's true? What if he did become the next governor of the state of Michigan? Like, so what? I'm not for it, but so what? I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. I still have a building to build to put my hay in, because I'm actually taking calories off this land that I can feed to cattle that are reproducing, that are drinking the water here and giving me 50 pounds of manure every day. That's real life stuff. It's real life wealth building. But whether some gay guy is the governor of the state of Michigan, who cares? I bet you Whitmer is our governor. I bet you she's got some real skeletons in her closet too. So what? I'd say, like, good, Whitmer. Why don't you put forth some sort of legislation to take weapons away from Americans? Why don't you do that? I dare you. Try that one on, sister. See what happens. You will go so fast, so far. You will go way too, well, you know what I mean. Way too far, way too fast, and things might get out of control, and you're not going to be able. And it's not me, but it's the masses that are already quite upset with the parasite class. I think the parasite class is always going to be around. And I think the best we can do in our lifetimes really is to slap them down. They'll always find a way to parasite. They'll always do that. This was really something that I noticed. Well, okay, I got something else I wanted to point out, but about the parasite class and how they build their network. But I wanted to make this. I wanted to round out this point first. This is where, or when we think that, hey, maybe someone will come that will support us, it happens to me all the time. Just recently, you guys know I was building this building. It's built now. My tractor's in there. My Jeep's in there. It's really nice. I've got wood stacked up in there. Matt helped me with it. Had the trusses up. I was about on my 26th of 50 turkeys that I had to butcher for Thanksgiving. The wind was blowing. It was not nice out. It was wet. Me and Frank were cold. Yeah, wah, wah, wah. And then all of a sudden I hear this crash, and I look over and the trusses have fallen over. And it took me a day to build them, and then probably about a half a day to get them up in place to where I thought they were secure. And I left them there, and I thought, they won't get blown over. Sure enough, they blew over. And I just said, okay, well, I'm going to have to take them down and repair them. That's all I can do. And I did. I got them all down. And I never once thought, I'm just going to sit here until somebody comes and helps me put it back together. I didn't. I just said, it's on me. I'm the one that's got to put them back up. And sure enough, I was prepared to do that. And I got a call from Matt. And he says, Matt Kovac, and he says, you need help putting those back up? And I said, oh, I sure do. I sure do. Because putting them up the second time is not near as fun as putting them up the first time. It's kind of heavy work. And, there's a lot of moving. You got to pick them up with the apparatus on the tractor and get them in place, and then got to move them into place and then stake them down. And it's just a lot of off and on and off and on. So anyway, Matt came to help. So I'm not saying that help isn't coming, right? And that you shouldn't be prepared to accept help. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying don't sit on your hands and wait for help that may never come. Don't do that. That's dumb. If you do that, your existence here on earth will be a lot less fulfilling than if you say, okay, we're going to get this fixed. I know there's people listening to me right now. that have physical disabilities, but they don't stop. They do what they can. They don't say, oh, well, my knee was replaced 10 years ago, so I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to sit on my can and do nothing. No, they're out there doing it. And, they're getting stronger, even though they're getting older. They're getting stronger, right? So that's my point is don't believe that there isn't somebody that will help you, even when you say God is in control. Yeah, he may help you. He may send somebody to help you. That story about the guy that's there's a terrible flood coming, and so he prays to God, please save me. And a guy comes by in a truck and says, hey, get in. The guy's, no, I just prayed to God, he's going to save me. And a guy comes by in a rowboat and he says, hey, get in. Nope, I'm okay, God's going to save me. He gets on the roof. A guy comes by in a helicopter, get in. He says, no, I'm good, I prayed to God, God's going to save me. Water goes over the house, he drowns. He winds up in heaven and he says, how come you didn't help me? And he says, well, I sent a truck, a rowboat, and a guy in a helicopter. What's your problem? So you've got a stake in this too. And to just say, well, I'm not going to, even try, I'm not going to proceed as though I'm on my own is really short-sighted. You have to do your part. You have to throw in on this. Something else just came to my mind. Yeah, and then there's the aspect of community, and that is where we make a conscious effort to be the tool that is sent to help somebody. Be that person, like, I don't know how to put this exactly, but make yourself available as a soldier, and take commands directly from the boss. Like some people need to be part of a standing army where they wait for standard orders to come down and do. But some people are like guerrilla type fighters. They're waiting and they're taking their orders directly from the top, and then they just do what they're told. Those are the more guerrilla fighters, the wild man on the back of a horse, the Josie Whale types. That's not for everybody, but yeah, so there's my message. I think we need to get ourselves toughened up, learn how to do stuff, train each other, start to exercise your subconscious a little bit. What I mean by that is if this message resonates with you, if you say, hey, you know what, I think he's right, he's onto something. Before you go to sleep at night, you just say, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to be a part of this? And let your ask the question and let your subconscious work on it during the night. And you might wake up in the morning and like, hey, I'm going to go shovel snow for my neighbor. She could really use my help. And I got 15 minutes before I got to be to work, something like that. And it might be a really small thing, but you never know what that might mean to somebody else. For a long time, I did not like accepting help. And that was a real mistake for me. That's something I had to work through, because accepting help is a good thing to do too. Okay, let's see what we got here. We got a lot of people chiming in. Oh, by the way, the show tonight is brought to you by the Anyone Can Farm Tribe Plus. And if you're not a Tribe Plus member, we ask you that we do us a solid and sign up. All right. Nathan says that Pete Buttigieg is going to be run for governor after Whitmer. Nice. Nice. They really want to demoralize um, Michigan. They really want to do that. You know what that does when they fool around with the voting, and you don't know anybody. There's nobody that you know that votes for somebody like Gretchen Whitmer. You know, Gretchen Whitmer has destroyed the state. She was the one that said no selling seeds during COVID. She didn't want you planting any vegetables. You know, no paint. Can't be painting your residence out. No lawn furniture. None of that fun stuff. You got to be staying home. Of course, if you need a bottle of Jack Daniels, that's not a problem. And the pot dispensaries, the marijuana dispensaries, well, that's cool too because you need that. But none of them good wholesome things, right? Close down the churches, yeah, but strip joints, they can stay open. It's really, I mean, everybody knows this in Michigan about our governor, right? The one we have now, the one that we just elected, right? And I don't think anybody really believes that anybody voted for her. You know, like the population centers that supposedly go blue. I don't I don't believe it. And nobody does. So yeah, wouldn't it be just fitting if old Pete Buttigieg became a resident of Michigan? Growing by faith. Exactly. We have to do what we can, and if help comes, great. That's frosting on the cake. Yep. Right on. Right on. I think it changes the dynamic. When you're sitting waiting for something to come, when it doesn't come, then you get bitter. Or by the other token, when you say, I got to do everything myself, that makes you bitter too, because I've been there. Nathan P, keeping it PG tonight. Okay. Help better come. I've got the Bocker's 400-pound hog in the kill pen, and it isn't going to butcher itself. Tell you what, you know what, Sean, you need to do? You need to have another class and have us come down as your camp hosts. That was fun. That was fun. I was thinking today, you know, it's almost January. The Gretsch who stole Christmas. I won't forget. Yeah, nobody forgets. And it is demoralizing that, you know, we have a great system in our country, but then it's been stolen by a few. Not most of us. The working class of people, the good hardworking people, they're not involved in election tampering. They're not. They are honorable people. It's the ones who want to be involved in election tallying. Why do you want to do that? Oh, I've just always wanted to do it ever since I was a little kid. Yeah, right. You want to do it so you can cheat. And there's only a few places where it really happens. You know, if you look at the demographics on it. So anyway, that's my message. I feel it very strongly, and it helps me because I really feel like I'm getting someplace. I really do. And it would be one thing, honestly, you guys, if I was a one-man show here that's putting together a farm and mastering a few things here and there. That'd be one thing. But when you see the results of showing somebody how to do something, and then they take it and they show somebody else or a bunch of other people. You know, Haven's with us tonight. Haven was our interviewee guinea pig last Thursday. And I think if you're going to watch an interview, that was a good one to watch because we're seeing this thing manifest right in front of us. And Haven speaks well and he explains himself very well. And I thought it was a very good interview for our audience. It was a good one to watch. And that's going to be an interesting group of guys to watch where they go in the future. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do next. he was quite humble when I said, "So what's on the horizon?" Well, we're going to do a few less this year. Yeah, we'll see about that. I don't think it works that way. We'll see, though. That'll be fun to watch. So, from the position that I'm in, when you see, like, the clerics have participated in this farm. They've participated in the things that we've offered, and they've really taken hold of it. And then they did 2 classes this year, or 3, I think, and one of them was a hog harvest class that we were involved with. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. So the people that I met there, I'll never forget that. I mean, it was just a myriad of people that were very unique, and those people are personifying the message that I'm bringing to you tonight. Like, it happened. I'm just telling you what happened. And I'm packaging it up, and I'm saying this is happening. Those people in that class are not waiting for the election of 2024. They're saying, and these are what I would classify as urban professional types. They have jobs. We had a nurse, we had a beautician, we had a financial analyst, we had a guy that wouldn't tell us what he was. So it must have been something. We had a GI, an Army GI. I don't remember what his wife did, though. But these people already had things that they were doing. And they were saying, yeah, but I think we want to learn how to do this too. We want to add this to our repertoire of survival skills. And I think there's been some mixing up of things, and almost, how intelligence organizations can take a word and they can demonize the word, like a conspiracy theorist. If you're a conspiracy theorist, I mean, that's as bad as being a flat earther, for goodness sakes, right? They do that. They do that because it sways people. People are easily swayed. If you, and I know this from growing up in a house full of my sisters. I don't want to put all girls in the same category as my sisters, but it was groupthink. You very rarely saw one of them that would say, "Well, I don't feel that way," because if they did, they'd be hammered to the point where, "Okay, I feel that way. Okay, I feel that way." That's kind of how the American public, the weaker side of the American public, has become. Is yes, I believe in a COVID, 100%, because they don't want to be demonized by the weaker end of things. Where in reality, if you're not being demonized, then you're not doing your job, because the things of this world are, we're possessed. We're demon possessed. Our society is really demon possessed. And when you go against that, of course you're going to get some pushback. You must get pushback. If you don't get pushback, you're missing something. Then you're on the wrong side, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I better quit it. All right. Well, that was it. I don't see a lot of messages in here for me. Has anybody got any questions? Anything we want to talk about? I'm going to sign off. I'm only an hour and 11 minutes, but got to go get me something to eat. We are not swimming in the pool. Today was our first day of not swimming in the pool. Yeah, the ice on the pool is too thick. We had very cold temperatures last week, and the ice on the pool is too thick. So I brought a water trough up, and it's sitting right out there. I put a heater in it, and so that's where I swam this morning. I went out there and didn't actually swim. I just lowered myself down into it like a bathtub and sat there for a minute. And when you're doing it, when you're lowering yourself down, you say, "What am I doing this for? Why am I doing this?" But then when you're coming up out of it, and then you come in the house and stand next to the wood stove and then say, "Yeah, I'm ready to do this. Let's go. That's why you do it. It is a buzz. It is a real buzz. All right. I'm going to go. Good night, everybody. Wednesday night, tomorrow night. I'm going to have to keep this open. So we watch the tribe, whether we're going to have a consulting call tomorrow night. And I don't believe anything's happening Thursday night. I think we're going to be on pause. Maybe we'll push it to Friday night with our interview, because I have something else going on Thursday night that really needs me. Growing by faith. It's the rush. It is. It really is. It wakes you up, gets your furnace going. All right. Anyone can farm. Good night. Tyson.
Are you done?
Yeah.
You need to shut it off.